Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of United We Will Grow podcast. My name is Kay Short, and we are here to reflect, refocus, and revitalize Gamma Alpha Omega Sorority Incorporated. I'm just one of your hosts, again, Kay Short, crossing spring 2010, new class, Omicron chapter, and my nickname is Turtle. So if things start going a little fast, it's not like me to do so, but hopefully maybe I could be a jackrabbit later on. But that's the nickname. And my other half and co-host is Miss Candace Sanchez, she'll introduce herself.
Yeah, Candace Sanchez, Everlasting Epsilon chapter. I crossed in fall of 2005. I'm probably dating myself. Mu class, and Still I Rise was my ship name, and it was Candace Phoenix Sanchez. So Phoenix just kind of was the name of the just because we were founded. No, just kidding. But yeah, so proud to wear that Phoenix Sanchez and Still I Rise. So yeah, so thanks, Kay Short. I love us doing what we're doing with the United We Grow podcast. I'm so excited for our guest today.
I think everyone's really excited for our guest today, and so I'm so excited to introduce one of them. Again, this is a big part of why we're doing this in the first place. We were just talking about the accessibility of podcasts, and it would be very silly of us for us to not be not only a young organization, but to be young and always, if not the first, the second or third, or whatever the case, just being a trailblazing organization to say, you know what, we need to get this story documented and get it to our sisters sooner than later. And I think there's no better time to do that than during our 30th year. So I'm so excited to introduce one of our guests is Miss Michelle Seañez. And she is a Los Angeles native and the founding attorney of Seañez Legal PC, located in Los Angeles. And she is celebrating her 10th anniversary this year, which is so awesome. The practice focuses on entertainment and intellectual property law, as well as provides other business transactions and litigation services. Within a year of opening her practice, Michelle was selected as a Rising Star, not surprised, 2014, 15, and 16, and listed as one of the top women attorneys in Southern California in the business and corporate practice area by Super Lawyers magazine. Currently, she is one of Alvarez's top-rated attorneys for 2022 and 2023. She has provided production and finance legal services on feature films such as Office Uprising, Cutthroat City, and the upcoming sci-fi thriller Parallel Forest. Before opening up her own firm, Ms. Seañez spent 10 years with a notable boutique litigation firm in Los Angeles, appearing on behalf of clients in both civil litigation and criminal defense matters before the state courts throughout California and federal courts in both the central and southern districts of California. Michelle is passionate supporter of the military, veterans, and animals. She proudly provides pro bono and discounted legal services to indigent veterans and active members of the U.S. military. She has served as a board member for the Sparta Project Incorporated, a nonprofit organization providing programs for military, law enforcement, and first responders battling PTSD, and is a member of the board of directors for Wild Spirit Rescue, a nonprofit horse and animal rescue. As a second semester freshman at Arizona State University, Michelle created the Alpha chapter in spring of 1993, then the national organization the summer that same year, with the other founders and charter members. She has held many leadership positions in the sorority throughout the years. Michelle currently serves on the advisory board to the National Executive Committee and proudly follows all the sorority and individual sisters' accomplishments. She lives in Los Angeles with a small. we had to Google this word. I was like, I have never heard of this word before. How do you say it again, Candace? Menagerie?
Menagerie.
Menagerie.
Menagerie. Yeah.
Look at here, y'all. This is why I
It's
didn't
like a
become an English
collective.
teacher.
Yes.
Of rescued dogs, cats, and horses. She enjoys cooking, reading, running, and took up archery as her pandemic hobby, which I absolutely love as opposed to making bread. So that's cool.
Welcome, Michelle. Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will have the honor and privilege to introduce Amy Felix. Amy Felix is a business analyst for the Graduate College at Arizona State University. She is a Phoenix native and an ASU alum with a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. She has over 20 years of experience of system implementations and process improvements. Amy held many leadership roles during her time at CenturyLink and the City of Phoenix. She was a supervisor and manager of both call centers and the site manager of the payment processing services operations at CenturyLink. Amy was also the vice president of operations of CenturyLink's Hispanic resource group, named Somos, and was a 2011 recipient of the 40 Hispanic Leaders Under 40 Award presented by Chicanos por la Causa and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. Amy was also a founder of Gamma Alpha Omega sorority. She created the Alpha chapter in the spring of 1993 and then the national organization in the summer of that same year, 1993. She has held many leadership positions in the sorority throughout the years and is currently a member of the advisory board to the National Executive Committee. She and her husband, Soilo, reside in Midtown Phoenix with their daughter, Zoe. Welcome, Amy and Michelle, to the show.
Thank you for
Yay!
having us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Of
I
course.
would like to say, because you are founders, right? I feel like I'm just in the presence of royalty. I will just say that.
Do not look at here, look at here, look at here. If I've observed anything of our founders, it's like this is just from afar, sitting in the seats, of course, but it's like I'm curious about you all of how you've teetered that over the years. If obviously there's sisters that are probably like freaking out, and then you all probably look at each other like, here we go, here goes another one. Like, tell us about what it's like to be founders and charters of this organization of probably over, I don't know how many sisters we have in the nation. Does anybody know by chance? I would hope
I
2,000.
don't know the totals. Um, that's a good question.
Last guess, best guess.
Well, I do know that we have 29 collegiate chapters and 13 alumni chapters. That I do know. But
Okay.
number-wise, I don't have the total number. But it's out there.
Okay. Well, yeah, tell us.
We'll have to kind of do some
Hmm.
research and report back on the next episode. I think that's
Right.
a really good stat to have in our back pocket.
That is a good stat. We will look it up. But tell us what it's like being a founder and charter of an organization and just over the years and how sisters respond to be around y'all. What's it been like?
It's kind of surreal. It kind of it humbles you because you see the impact you've made on, I guess, now generations, because now we're seeing daughters, people that are could be our daughter, actually even our daughters that are coming in now. Um, so it's kind of surreal, I think, and it's humbling as well when they come up to us and want to talk to us, and we're happy to talk to anybody who wants to come talk to us. But it is very humbling.
Hmm. Hmm. What about you, Michelle?
I mean, definitely what Amy said. It is very humbling. I think part of it though is that, I mean, for me, being the one that's out in LA, I don't get back to Arizona all that much, so I'm not around physically as much to see it firsthand. But I think what it is that the time goes by so quickly that you don't realize it until you really sit down and you start looking at what's going on. I mean, and then you realize it's now 30 years. You know,
Hmm.
it's actually 30 years. It just kind of boggles the mind to think that's something we created when, I was
Hmm.
17 years old, which
Yeah.
now I've aged myself, but I was 17 years old as a freshman at ASU, and all of a sudden it's like 30 years later, and I'm seeing, you know, girls who are daughters of my
Hmm.
co-founders who are now
Hmm.
at school at ASU and going through, and it's just kind of come almost, it's not exactly full circle, I'd say, but like close to, because it's how did this happen? I think we are just so close to it, and we were always go 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 go, that we didn't sit back and really enjoy it and really get to see it in perspective. And now we can, and it's just kind of, it is very humbling to think that something we created that long ago is still up and running and doing so remarkably well, because we have such exceptional sisters.
Hmm. Did you think it would get this far?
I always dreamed it would. That was part of my
Hmm.
dream, that it would get this far, that we would not just be at ASU, but we would grow it and be at different universities, and we'd have sisters at different locations. And I can go to another school or state and say, oh, I have a sister that lives here. So that was always one of my dreams when I started it, is to do that.
Hmm.
I agree. I think that was one of our combined, visions for the future. Um, definitely having that network of sisters automatically. I know that because I've done it before, where I've seen someone's out here and we connect on social media or however it is that we connect, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, let's go grab brunch, let's go grab dinner, let's meet up, or I still one of my littles, Renee, out in DC, she and I every year. I'm gonna make it out there for the cherry blossoms. I'm gonna make it out there for the cherry blossoms. I think we're going on 5 years. I've been trying to get out there for the cherry blossoms, and we'll see. Maybe this year will be the year that I make it out there. But it's just so nice to have that network, and that was really what we were looking at. It wasn't anything other than just that extended support system for everyone.
Yeah. Right before you got on, I'm curious. Michelle got on, y'all, and she was running on Gamma Time, something that's not new to some of us. And so I'm curious. I mean, there's two curiosities that come with that. Amy was like, "Yeah, that's Michelle." They're like, "Yeah, we already know." Right? Actually, Amy didn't even tell us, like, "Hey, by the way, this is probably what's gonna happen." She says this, but this is probably what's gonna happen. So I'm curious, like, what is the roles of the founders and charters in terms of personality wise? Is Michelle the one that has a lot going on, you know what I mean? Probably will show up a little bit later than the meeting time. Because when I see them, I see myself in a sister or two. You know what I mean? So it kind of sometimes feels replicated when you go to other chapters, or whatever. So we would love to hear more about your perspective of um, kind of the roles and personalities of the other founders and charters, including your own.
Oh, we were all so different. We were just,
But you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's working. It works.
And
So
it does. That was the crazy
I think we
thing.
complemented each other.
A lot, yeah, and we still do, because we still communicate. Like, we can go like a couple months, and then all of a sudden we just blow up a chat, and it goes on for weeks and weeks. But we're still the same way, and it just we complement each other so well.
mm,
And we're all very different. And yeah, it's just hard
right.
to
So how
explain.
would you
But we're all
describe, go ahead. Yeah, go
it's
ahead.
it's hard to explain because we all have our own personalities. We're all very different.
Well,
But at the same time, there is still something that's very similar about all of us.
Right. Which is?
I hate, well, and I was just about to say I hate to use the Spice Girls as an example, but everyone's got their personality. I mean, it's very distinct though.
Yeah.
like
We're all very distinct in our personalities.
I was always like the quiet, shy one.
What, Amy?
Yeah, that was me, the quiet, shy one, the shy
Hmm.
one. And Michelle,
Sometimes.
yeah, sometimes unless I got going. Well, I learned how to gain my voice, so when I got my voice, then it wasn't so quiet anymore. Um,
Then it wouldn't stop.
yes, and Michelle,
But
Love
I
that.
think that's how family dynamics are even, right? So it's like you guys have built this family, this unit, and that's why you guys work so well. And that's why you are the leaders, the founders. We look up to you, the mothers of like this organization, and like when K Short says, I see some of me in some of all of you and some of all my sisters in the footprint. So what you've created is just kind of like an image sort of that footprint, those paw prints that we talk about. That's what I see,
yeah, and
which is
Yeah.
pretty darn awesome.
yes, and
I see a little bit of me in both of you.
that's what I
Hmm.
kind of had told. Well, they didn't know this until like maybe 5 years ago, or no, actually at our 20th, um, where it's like I actually really try to emulate like the best out of each of the founders, and try to for that to be my goal. Like each one of them, like I
Mm,
try to take a piece of them to help me be a better person, um, or just grow that in that way. And I looked up to them for that reason. And if I have to
mm,
bounce an idea off of somebody, I know who to go to. Like if I need somebody to be direct to me, I know who to go to. That's going to be like Annette, direct to the point.
mm,
And
mm.
but if I need the softer side, I'm going to probably go to Clara, more of that person. When I really need to get an
Mhm,
adversary to really hash this out, it's Michelle, because she had that lawyer. She
mm,
always had that
mm,
lawyer brain in her, always. So we
mm,
would bounce off each other, and a lot of the times we would debate, right, Michelle?
I was going to say butt heads, but debate's a good word.
Debate, but we all. But the
Says the
crazy
lawyer.
part is that we
We
were.
would have sisterly arguments, as all sisters do.
But at the end, we were saying the same
But I think
thing.
that's a great Yeah, and I think that's okay to
Yeah,
disagree, right? It's okay to have conflict. It's just how do you work through that? And I think
yeah,
it's giving each other that permission, that safe place. I'm hearing what you're saying, but I just maybe don't agree. I think we should go this way instead of that way. I think Kay Short and I had to live through that the last 6 months planning this podcast. So for
yes.
sure, we know how that is.
Or a lot of time we were
Yeah,
actually.
I mean, and
I'll go ahead, Michelle.
no, go
I
ahead,
was
Amy.
gonna
Go
say a
ahead.
lot of time we were actually going for the same place, but we just went about it differently. We were just thinking about the different tentacles to whatever that was,
Mm,
but the actual result was actually the same. We were saying the same thing. We just were saying it differently.
mm.
But we knew that, so we would,
And that's where I think and I think that's where the complementary comes in. It's like we all had a goal in mind, and how we went about it was different. It wasn't good, bad, wrong, or right. It was just different. And sometimes talking it out and taking a little bit of Amy's idea, a little bit of my idea, a little bit of Clara's, Patsy's, Annette's, whoever's, Val's, Roxana, whatever. It was just, it would actually make it so much better.
yeah,
It's like, it's like making food. It's like making a meal. You've got to add a little bit of everything. It's seasoning. It's making things. It makes things better altogether because I may have an idea that Amy also has, but her way of going about it may just build on to what my base idea was. And we eventually learned how to work with
yeah.
that, and I think that was the important part. And I think it served us. I mean, granted, the fact that we did this when we were so young, I think served all of us so well. Once we got into our professional lives as well.
Yes, I agree with that.
I love that.
So
I love that. And I think going back to leaning on these sisters, I think of what I've heard of the story thus far. A lot of times I hear that Amy is the one who had the vision, or carried most of it. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to get into the story of how Gamma even formulated in the first place. I'm curious if that is the case. If you did have the vision, what was it that, of course, like inspired you to want to start it? But I'm curious if that's how you also recruited, because what I'm hearing is that you lean on what the sisters have the best of, right? You're like, if I want this, I'm going to go to this sister. If I want more of that, I'm going to go to this sister, whatever the case. I'm curious if there was also some level of intent in formulating this vision when it came to recruiting the right girls at 17, 18 years old to start this organization. So why don't you tell us more about how Gamma got started at Arizona State University in 1993?
We actually started before that in fall of 92 is when we first came up with the idea. And the reason is because there wasn't, let me kind of step back. So my background was I went to a high school that was predominantly Latino. That's what it was. Like maybe 10%, 5% was not. So that,
Carl Hayden?
yeah. Yes, I went to Carl Hayden on the west side of Phoenix. Now it's not really the west side, it's kind of mid Phoenix now that it's grown so much. Um, so when I went to ASU, it was a very huge culture shock for me there, because a lot of people didn't look like me. It was reversed now. So I kind of spent my first year just, going to school. And actually, I still lived at home because, I am a woman and Latina, and it was kind of hard for my parents to even even to ask permission to go there to live on campus. It was difficult. So I drove there. And that's kind of what I did the first year. And then the second year, um, kind of expanded more. And that was thanks to, at the time, my boyfriend, which is now my husband. And he found that they were doing a Latino fraternity on campus. And they had already started a year prior, and they were trying to get their chapter at the time when he started. So I got exposed more to people that looked like me, and more of the clubs that fit my demographic. But there was only certain choices. There wasn't a lot of choices, and I didn't really fit into any of those. Um, so it was always like, I want, because I always wanted to do Greek life, um, even when I was little, but I knew I didn't fit into the traditional Greek life. So I never really went for it, but it was always something that I wanted to do. Um, and then during that fall semester is actually, I heard Michelle was starting a sorority. She was going to start one. So she already had talked to a couple other people that wanted to do this. And then I had met her already. So back then we would go down to the Memorial Union and everybody would hang out downstairs. It was a basement level. It's still there. It doesn't look like it did then, but it's still there. And that's where people would hang out. And that's where I actually met Michelle. So when I heard that, I went to go look for Michelle and I said, Michelle, I'm in. I want to do this.
Wow.
Um, and she was already talking to a couple other people. And so we started kind of just exploring, you know, which one, because we knew of a couple others that were there, that were not there, but were already founded nationwide. So we kind of started looking at our options of what we wanted to do. And during that time, we decided to do our own. That way we would be able to come up with everything that we wanted to do and accomplish the goals that we had already talked about, the two of us. Here's what we want to do. And we started at that point, at the end of the fall semester, looking at recruits. Like, we kind of did handpick people. And it was also the fraternity, so it was Omega Delta Phi that was there, and they heard that we were doing this, so they also like, hey, I know somebody, here's their number. I asked a couple people that I met in classes if they wanted to do it, and just meeting some of the girls that were hanging out downstairs, see if they wanted to. And Michelle recruited some people from the Hispanic Mother-Daughter program that she knew, which coincidentally I also knew because I went to high school with them. So I had known them for quite a while before that. And we, went through that in the spring of '93 is when we got everybody together, and we went ahead full force officially on campus at ASU as a club at the time, because we weren't recognized by any Greek authority at that point. I don't know what you have,
Wow.
I think Michelle had a different perspective because of how she started it, how she came up with this
Right. I was
idea.
like, this part of the story hasn't came
Yes.
up. Oh, like Michelle has been a hard one to catch, y'all. I just want to say that because she's in Los Angeles. So getting her on the line, y'all, is a big deal. So soak it all in while you can. So Michelle, she's saying that you were already ready to get started, and Amy said, "I'm in." So I'm like, whoa, this is new information to me. So tell us your side of the story.
So funny enough, I had a different perspective coming in because unlike Amy, who went to public school and went to predominantly Hispanic school, I went to private school and I was one of 5 total minorities in my class at the time. So I went to Xavier College Prep, which is the
Mm,
all-girls school down in Central Phoenix,
mm-hmm.
and so for me coming to ASU, it did look different to me too, but I think it was mostly because of the opposite reason from Amy's. Like, I actually saw a lot of people who did look like me and didn't look like everyone else at my school in class. I too had
Wow.
wanted to go through Greek life, but despite the fact that I grew up around a lot of non-Hispanic people in the 4 years that I went to high school out there, it still wasn't really the right fit for me, regardless. It wasn't, a lot of the stuff that they did was great, but at the same time, it was very superficial and it wasn't quite what I wanted. And that's kind of where I started thinking about it because I had heard about the fraternity that was on campus, Omega Delta Phi. I mean, I went to ASU. I didn't have anyone coming from school with me. I didn't really have a lot of friends there other than the girls from the mother-daughter program. And so I kind of just met people through that little by little. And I think Soila was the one who said, hey, my girlfriend might be interested in doing something like this. And that's how Amy and I met, actually. So we do have him to thank for that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where I had thought to myself, like, there's all these. I didn't know anything about starting a sorority. I didn't know what was going to be necessary. I just thought to myself, like, it'd be kind of cool to have a place, a thing like this where it's just us and we can make it up as we go along with whatever we want to do. So why not do it? Yeah. We had no idea how much work it was going to be. None whatsoever.
So I have a question, Michelle and Amy. Was it like you put things on paper and you guys had just this like meeting and you guys just got together and just started talking about all your ideas? Like, how did you really like put it into action? Like you take the thought, did it go to paper and then you had to execute, or was it just like you mentioned a club until it actually became, you know, an organization, a chapter, a founding chapter? Tell me
Oh,
that story.
you're gonna get them
Well,
into the story about how they all had to share a computer in the library. Here goes technology conversations. Let's
Well,
go.
here's the thing. I mean, yeah, but I'm just curious, like, typewriters, we didn't have this like, social media, I can see everybody at any time, right? Just
We had
taking us back.
pagers.
Yeah.
We had pagers.
we had
Okay. I didn't have an email address until Amy taught me how to use the internet. Okay. So that's aging
Wow.
ourselves, but there you
But
go. There
Yes.
was no
yeah,
texting.
no,
We didn't have phones with cameras and all these fancy things. We
you
had
had a
pagers.
landline. You called each other on the landline. I
We
know what
had
a
a
landline
landline.
is.
We had a lot of quarters in our pockets. And we had codes on our pagers.
Oh, wow.
That's the
Codes.
life we led.
That is awesome. That is
So,
so
I
cool.
mean, think of how challenging it is now with all these different ways of getting a hold of each other, and take all of that away and give yourselves just two ways to get a hold of everybody. And that's what we had to work with.
it
Yeah.
was a lot of
Yeah.
between me and Michelle, a lot of
Yeah.
informal meetings, eating lunch together and just talking. It was just a lot of informal at the beginning. And then when we found the people who we wanted to invite to join us is when that first meeting happened, and they were all on board too. So we said, okay, this is the day. Today we're starting this, and that happened in the springtime. Yeah, so it was yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that that story is just amazing. Just so thank you for sharing. I think it's really good to kind of get down to the roots for everyone listening and just understanding when we have our founders telling that story is just so telling. It's captivating and something that I think you both, well, all the founders in charge are very proud of. Because look at 30 years later, here we are. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about when we were talking about your bios. I really loved reading both bios and Kay Short and I being able to introduce each of you, but like Amy reading your bio and just thinking about your career path and your journey of life. So like you're in this professional space, so based on where you are now and what you're doing for both of you, what professional advice do you give to our sisters that are listening to the podcast, with your career path and your journey of life and how you've landed in these positions? I mean, Amy, system implementations, operations VP, operations centers. I mean, wow, roles, responsibilities. But I'm sure Gamma had a lot to shape you and to be prepared, right? Same thing with Michelle, just that lawyer brain. Wow, like holy moly, like you could be our Judge Judy, Judge Michelle. All things gamma related is what I think about,
She was back then.
So yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back then she was our
So yeah,
judge.
just yeah, so just share some, what based on your career path, where you are now, what you're doing, what is that those professional advice, those good nuggets that you can give to all of our sisters listening?
Well, I think Gamma helped me do all those things because, well, as a founder, again, like what Michelle said, we created anything we wanted to. We decided, everything. And we had to create manuals and constitutions and procedures, and we had to write all this stuff down. So that was really my starting point of learning how to do that because it had to stand the test of time as well. And we knew that. We knew we had to document everything. So right now I'm a business analyst and I have to document requirements. Well, that's a lot like writing a procedure for how to start an undergraduate chapter or our intake ceremony, intake processes. So I really learned a lot of that there. And then I also learned too, because I have to present to at work to the vice president, to the dean, that even at my old jobs too, I had to present to vice presidents, directors, and I learned that skill in Gamma because we had to do a lot of presentations. We had to run meetings. We had to um, just talk to membership. And I had to do it within the chapter, but then also nationally. So that really shaped me. So the advice I'd give is, take advantage of those positions that you do have and really learn them, because it's going to help you in the future. It's going to help you find your voice. It's going to help you get more comfortable presenting in front of people, because that's a skill that is being lost, I think. Just hearing friends and family, talk about their opportunities at work that they have with employees and stuff like that, is people don't know how to present all the time, and it's hard. Well, you get practice. That's what you get good at it, by practicing. And you did it a lot by running a meeting, learning Robert's rules, learning, if you had to write a proposal for a social event or a fundraiser, you learn how to do all those little things. And that really does set you apart when you're trying to find a job, because you know how to run a meeting, you know how to put things together, you know how to present. At times, we had to learn how to just talk to each other, learn how to communicate with each other. So it teaches you all those basic skills to really be successful out there. And it did really teach me in my profession to where I'm at right now, being a manager and a supervisor and now an analyst. It's really taught me how to do that. Yes.
And Michelle, your thoughts, professional advice, based on where you are with all of your legal expertise and knowledge. And I just have to say, Michelle, too, the way you're giving back with all of again, it's hard for all of us, right? We just like to get our fingers into everything. I think we're the Jill of all trades, and, being part of nonprofits and your passion for, the veterans and just that effort. I think that's just amazing on top of what you do in the legal system.
Thank you. But I think what Amy says is such a big part of it. I mean, for me, looking at what I do, it was a lot of learning to compromise, learning to see other people's points of view, learning to see other people's points of view, and figuring out how to make my point seen in opposition to that. We may not always agree, but if Amy had a point to make and I didn't quite agree, I had to vocalize why I did not agree. Not just, no, I don't agree, and that's just it. No, I don't agree, but this is why I don't agree, and have that conversation. Which serves me very well with regards to, contract negotiation or settlement discussions. Amy hit the nail on the head when it comes to presentation. I mean, I got to get up in front of judges and make my case for a client. I've got to go in front of a client and explain to them why certain things are certain ways, even though they don't agree with it or they think it's not fair. Sometimes you get asked questions that you don't know the answer to, and you either have to be confident enough to be able to come up with an answer and cross your fingers and hope that they're not going to start questioning you even further about it, and because you don't have the research to back you up quite yet. Or you've got to be able to say, well, you know what? I don't know. Can I have 5 minutes and I'll go find out and I'll come back and let you know. People are intimidated to do that because no one likes to say, I don't know, when it is 100% fine. I can't tell you how many times I've had to do it in front of a judge when I'm covering for someone else and it's not my case. And I really do not know the answer to the question. And it could be something as simple as, where are you in this case? Have you had settlement discussions? I don't know. I don't handle this. But give me 5 minutes and I'll call the office and I'll get a hold of the person that's supposed to be doing this case and I will ask them and let you know. And, it does give you that little bit of confidence. I don't particularly like public speaking, but I can do it, and you are able to do it in a way that is persuasive and gets people to see your way and gets people to do what you want. That's part of what we had to do. We had to get the administrators to look at us as not just a club on campus, not just a bunch of girls who wanted to do stuff together and hang out and have a name and colors and a mascot and a this and a that and the other, and say, no, we are serious about what we're doing. We want to give back to the community. This isn't just a social organization. This is actually a philanthropic organization that has social aspects to it and educational aspects to it. It is important for every girl to go through, every sister to go through and graduate. It's one of those things that a lot of us, and I know now that we're getting into further generations of sisters that are coming through the sorority, it may not be a first generation college attendee, but when we were going there, I believe we were all first generation. Every single one of us was probably first generation to graduate high school and even get into college, much less finish. So that was a big, big deal for us. That's the reason why we made it, we imposed study sessions. We imposed philanthropic events and said, no, this is how many times you're going to do, well, you'll have to tell me what you guys call them now. We used to call them pledges, obviously. But when we had our incoming new members, we imposed study sessions. You had X number of hours. You got to get them signed off. You got to learn the history because history is important because you have to learn where you came from. You've got to present. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And as Amy says, a lot of times, these days, especially, I think, and honestly, I think it was mostly because of the pandemic, because we didn't do this. At least here, when we did court, we didn't do remote. Every now and again, you'd get to call in. You could call your appearance in and do a court appearance over the phone. But we didn't do it over Zoom until the pandemic, obviously, because we couldn't just sit back and do nothing for, over a year. But now it's like people prefer to do that where I prefer to go in person because I want to see the judge's face. I want to be able to have that conversation as a person with them and be able to present my case to them as opposed to just being someone on the screen that he doesn't have to really look at, doesn't have to make eye contact and interact with. Especially if we don't use video sometimes, because sometimes I can't. I'm at one courthouse doing a court call while I'm waiting to get heard on something else. And, but I've seen, the younger generations of attorneys coming through, and it is harder for them to go in and present in person than it is for them to just talk on the phone or on Zoom. And you just don't, I have an advantage if I'm in front of the judge. Because like it or not, I can talk over you. Because the judge isn't going to tell me to be quiet. And I'm going to drown you out. There's advantages to that. But regardless of which, like Amy said, the presentation, the being personable, the having to look people in the eye and shake people's hands, that served us all well when, learning it when we were that young into doing so now. Now I don't. Again, I may not like it, but I have no problem walking into a room and talking to almost anybody there. And I have no problem saying, I don't know. Oh, you're an executive with an oil and gas company. I know nothing about what you do. Why don't you tell me a little bit about it? And now I've learned something new. So.
I love that. I love that. And I love that it's still, again, like you're able to go back to that experience as an undergrad, of course, putting down these roots, and it's still showing up to this day. Like now we're seeing it 30 years later, and it's still showing up, and that's incredible. Just to get it on record, though, passing it back to Amy, I know sisters are thinking about it. How did we get all of our white thornless rose, our classic red apples, our jewels, things like that? Just to put it on record, because not everyone gets to make it to nationals, but how did y'all come up with what represents us as an organization?
Amy.
We lost her. Michelle,
Oh,
she
no, we
don't come
lost her.
back.
Oh, Lord. Now I got to do it. I
It's
got
gonna
to do
be
this all
on you.
myself. God. And as we get older, the memory fades. There's a lot in there. It was, We went through and we looked at the symbolism of a lot of things. We talked about different mascots. We talked about, actually, I think to start, what we did is we talked about what is it that we wanted to represent us. What are the key words that we want representing us? Amy just told me her screen froze, so I think she's going to pop back in a minute.
No worries.
But that's what we did. We said, what do we want representing us? And then we started kind of looking into it. We had to go to this thing called the library. There's these things called books. Crack them open. You read words in them.
Yep.
And we did our old fashioned Google search at the library. Going through reference materials to see, what does an emerald mean? What does a diamond mean? What is a white rose? There's red roses, and we all know red roses, love, yellow roses, friendship, white roses, Here we have, something that is, they say black is the absence of all color and white is the presence of all colors. Well, there you go. We've got so many different personalities, so many different traits, so many different things that represent us. And that was one of those perfect things that just serendipity, that just kind of came up and everyone went, yeah, that's great. We love that. A lot of consensus. And we knew when we could get that many girls to agree that wholeheartedly, we were onto something. Yeah. And I think Amy's back. Amy.
Yes, I'm back. I froze. Of course, technology, right?
It's all good. Did you get the question?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I think I heard Michelle talk about the rose. Yeah, there was a lot of things that we had come across and we presented that first meeting. And there's some things that we decided that day. But like Michelle just said, everybody agreed so quickly that when Michelle and I left that meeting, I was like, Michelle, what just happened? They all said yes. And we agreed on so many things. But like the apple and the jewels and stuff, those came later after we had already founded. Like at least 3 years later, different sisters from different chapters introduced them into our, I guess it's called what, aesthetic? And my daughter says a lot. Is the aesthetic isn't right. But
What's the brand?
yes,
It's the Gamma Lifestyle,
it
brand.
is. And it just, yeah, so they added their little piece. And it all fit into what we were.
Well, and obviously, I think you had that, whatever ideas you created, and you had the power of influence. And obviously, there must have been something lacking that people were like, this is great. Like, I want to be a part of it. Like, people were all in because it was something that you conveyed with probably passion and purpose and the vision that you had. Who wouldn't want to be a part of something, especially if it was not represented, right? The service base, Latinas coming together, multicultural, all of that. You guys formed that for us. And I think that that really speaks true to really what the sisterhood, at least from my viewpoint and where I've come with Gamma.
Yeah,
So yeah, I love that.
you made a good point. There was not a lot of representation out there in entertainment. In music, there was a little bit. Like actresses, like there was nothing really there. We didn't have those role models we can look up to and say, okay, we can achieve this as Latinas, as Hispanic women. We didn't have that. And like now you turn on the TV and you see you do see it now a lot more. And
I mean, there's whole shows with a full Latino cast. Back then, we were lucky if we got one person. I
they're
mean,
usually the best.
who was the biggest actress back then? Amy, what? Selma, probably.
Not even. I think Mario Lopez when he was on
Oh, Saved by the Bell. Yeah, he was on Saved by the Bell.
But even there, they did an episode where he found out he was Latino. I'm not sure if you remember that.
Yeah, he was just a really tan white guy.
Yeah, with curly hair.
Well, I used to watch, I'm sorry, I'm going to date myself, Happy Days, and I saw the Fonz, and I'm like, well, is he Hispanic? Because he looks Mexican. Like, he's wearing this leather coat. But like some of my uncles look like that. So for me, it was like, huh, It was just I watched Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I did too when I was growing up, and you're right. There wasn't anything, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
love that.
yeah,
I love that. I think
and
I, just to bring it back. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
yeah, so yeah, that's what we found lacking, and that's what we wanted to change. Where in the future, young girls, wherever we volunteered, that's what we wanted to volunteer. Have that as one of
Mm,
our emphasis is that when we would volunteer at these campuses or at these elementary schools or whatever we were at, young girls that look like us would see somebody that looked like them at college and
mm,
succeeding, and that way they would put it in their minds, oh, I can do this too, because they did it, I
mm-hmm,
can do it as well. That was one of the
mm-hmm.
main
I,
goals we wanted, is to be that representation, be that role
And
model.
if you
Well,
look,
even
well, I was going to say, and if you look at our demographic with regards to just the founders of the charters, I mean, we all look so different and come from different backgrounds and different, um, our parents came from different places, and there is, when you really start delving into it, there is a lot more representation. I mean, the pool isn't as shallow as you think just from the surface.
Mhm.
And it's, and it is one of those things. I think one of our first big philanthropic things that we did, Amy, if I'm not mistaken, was we did the mother daughter program, but we did the weekend that they were on campus, right? What
Yes.
we used
mm,
to the mother daughter program. I honestly I don't know if it's still active or if it's still a thing over at ASU campus, but they would do I think it was like a long weekend on campus where the girls would get to stay at the dorms and they would eat in the cafeteria and go around and I think we did activities and stuff on campus. So it kind of gave them a little taste of that campus life. And you know all of us girls who are at college were their counselors and
mm.
to give them kind of a little taste of like, hey, this could be you too. You just gotta keep on track and keep studying and do this and do that. And I mean, it worked. We there were more and more girls coming through school, but that was one of the bigger things. And I think that if we didn't have an organization where that was something we could provide, we wouldn't have had that ability to do it.
I love that. I love that you all talk about how you're all so different. But I'm curious though, what do you think is the common thread amongst all of us? Because you said when you left that meeting, everyone was in agreement, and you were like, oh my gosh, everyone agreed. So what do you think is at the core of all of us as a sister of Gamma Alpha Omega?
Hmm.
Amy, did you freeze again?
No, I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Good. Don't ever stop thinking. Kidding.
I think it's that we all had that. Well, not all of us, because I know like Annette never saw herself in a sorority. She always says that she's not a sorority girl. She'll tell you. Um, but when we all got together, I think it was just honestly that, I guess, that sisterhood bond. We just kind of bonded some, and we like the idea that we could make a difference in the world. Our little kind of speck, and you look what it grew into. That little seed that we planted. I think that's what they want. We wanted to make a difference and have that support system for girls that look like us, um, and they'd have a home, and that way our parents wouldn't worry as much about us when we were away from home.
Well, I think you were intentional from what I'm hearing too. Just when you tell the story, you're intentional about education was important. Having those study hours.
Yeah.
You imposed these are very critical for success because you wanted to graduate. You wanted to be the role models maybe we didn't see growing up, right? So whether we're first generation or we were going to make that stamp, right? We were going to make it happen and that education and then the experience is only going to be better when you can share those common goals and visions, which is why I think with the sisterhood, that's the bond, the connections, those forever lifelong, and then you grow up and you grow old together. And then you see people getting married or getting divorced or breakups or having children, grandchildren, like just the circle of life to share that with common people, I think is again what you've all started is what just continued to grow.
Yep, and you hit it all. We've been in those phases for each other. The marriages, the
Yeah.
divorces, the kids, the grandkids. Now some of them have grandkids. Um, they're just the different happy and sad phases in our lives. We've been there for each other.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll be a little, I'll be a little honest with the selfishness of it is I think originally, along with all of those altruistic ideas that we had, I think the common thread was that all of us were there at school kind of on our own, or we knew one other person, maybe a couple people, but we didn't really have that support system. I didn't know how to register for classes by myself. I didn't know I didn't really even know how to put my schedule together. I didn't know that you could like not go to school on Tuesdays and Thursdays and just go Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I didn't know this. I, you know, who
Yeah.
knew? This is amazing. This is great. But I think when you kind of take everything away, I think the common thread that got us started and got us together was that friendship, was that bond of we're all in it together. We're all here by ourselves, but we're all in it together. So let's be in it together. Um,
Right.
and then create something that other people have for support. Other girls who are coming in who don't know anyone at this giant school. I went to high school with a whole 100 other girls. And then I go to ASU and it's like a billion people. I didn't, how am I supposed to know how to meet people at a school that big when I'm not used to it? It was just, a lot of it had to do with serendipity and a lot of it had to do with just the fact of, I think we all wanted like that common thread, that thing that every human wants was just a connection, and we all connected, and we were able to connect in a way that we created other ways for other people to connect as well.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I want you to know, like, I know for myself, I can speak personally. What you all have created has continuously inspired me to want to create something for girls like myself, and like as much as, growing up in Maryville, I was like, yeah, I'm always going to be around like Mexican folks and Latino women. But like every time I find myself in a group, recognizing like, man, I'm still the only one that looks like me in this group. I love my sisters, you know what I mean? But I'm like, man, I think about that representation. I think about that visibility. And so I just want you to know, like, you being a part of this organization has inspired me to want to create that for girls like myself, too, who have to deal with an extra layer of being a part of the LGBTQ community and things like that. So it's just like I think about them and how they don't have access and they don't have the resources. They don't know who's helping them register for classes or whatever. And so, again, if this organization didn't exist, I don't know how my life would have been directed, whether I think a big common core of us is being of service, right? And being leaders, I think is what I've noticed the most out of the sisters I've met. And so I just want to say thank you so much for just laying such a solid foundation for all of our sisters and for future generations. So um, not gonna get all emotional. So with that said, I want us to transition, Candace. I want to transition, and it would be for me, I feel like a disservice if we don't have this conversation on record, in terms of where we're at 30 years later. Again, you all are serving at the national level on the executive committee. Thank you for continuing your service with sisters now and for the future. But you all have insight from beginning to now and for however long as to the health of our organization. I know Candace and I are inspired and motivated from what we see from the outside, involved, not involved, whatever that may look like at this point in our lives. And this is why we wanted to come together, use our gifts and talents to be like, hey, how can we have this documentation in audio form to have these conversations for the future of our sisterhood? So asking Amy first, like, what can you tell us about the health of our organization right now? What are things that you feel like are going well? What are things that you think we need improvement on? Hearing it, from a generation that had to write things down on paper. I'm still curious of who the secretary was at that time. I feel sorry for their hand. I think it was Clara. I don't know who it was. You could tell me. But yeah,
I
we would just
think
love
it
to know
I think it
the
was
health of the
Clara.
org. Yeah.
So sorry, I
Yeah.
think it was Clara, but every now and again we would take turns. Um,
Okay.
yeah, if there is like if for whatever reason someone couldn't make it, then one of us would sit there and handwrite everything. And I think we lost Amy again. Um,
That's okay. Well, why don't
but
you tell us about where you think we're at and
oh, there she is.
yeah, what's going well and what do you think we need to change and pivot and like how can we just refocus as an organization on the mission and vision of what you all started back then?
Amy,
I caught half of that. I'm sorry.
is she back?
I'm back. Yeah.
Amy, I mean, Michelle, since you heard the whole question, why don't you start it off? And Amy is so smart and intelligent that she'll figure it out and answer the question too.
Amy, they're asking about the health of the organization, and I mean, I will I will put it this way. Amy's probably the better one to answer this question because Amy is far more involved at the moment than I am. I think given the proximity and that she has to the chapter and to the relationship she has with the girls who are on the national committee, having moved right after college, did give me a little bit of distance. So for me, I think when I look at that question, I look at it from a more bird's eye view than I do of being right on in there and involved. Whereas Amy's right in the center of, she's kind of in the eye of the storm, and so I would have her answer that. For me, just kind of looking over everything and going from my experience of the growing pains that we went through, and boy, did we go through some growing pains. I think it's just one of those things that continues. 30 years in to us seems like a lot of time. We're still a baby organization. I mean, there are other organizations similar to ours who have like 3-4 times the amount of years in existence than we do. And taking that into perspective does lead me to say, with regard to everyone, this is a very important organization, don't get me wrong, but something to kind of keep in mind is that it's not the be all end all, and flexibility is so key. It goes back to learning, taking this as a learning experience to build on for the future, and remembering me now 30 years later of what I was like at 17, 18, 19 years old, and understanding you know the importance certain things have at that age versus this age with the experience that I have. There might be times where I'd look at, we're talking and looking at what's going on, and I sit there and I say, why are they arguing about this? Like, that makes no sense. Like, if no one's going to care about this in 6 months to a year. And then, Amy will be like, yeah, but remember what we used to argue about? And I was like, oh, yeah, you got a point there. Let them have their time. I think for me, we have to kind of respect the generational growing pains. Let the, let everyone go through that themselves. Even if it's the same argument that we had 20 years ago, have it again, because it's a whole different set of girls. It's a whole different set of people who are having this conversation, and they may have different ideas because it's now a different time. Let them do this and let them hash it out. We may not agree with the outcome. We may not agree with how they're hashing it out, and we will give our opinion about it. But it's a conversation of letting go for us as well. At least for me, it was. I should speak for all of my sisters, but for me, it was that idea of letting go, because I was at the center of it for so long, and we had so much control over how this evolved for so long, that when it came time to let it go, it was really, really difficult. And so for me, I've kind of tried to do that and say, okay, when they need guidance and they come to me, I will give them my opinion, but let them make their decisions, because it affects them. It doesn't affect me any longer, other than how I see everything going. So in essence, to me, that's kind of how it's going. it's an evolution and a one that continues on over each generation and over each year, every however many years it takes for a class to cycle out of the college experience and the new ones to come in and learn. You know, Amy will have a better answer with regards to the day to day or the up close and personal, you know, aspect of it.
Yeah, I think Michelle kind of hit it where it's a new set of leaders that we have coming in once you graduate, because now our leadership is alumni, and we are leaders because we're the ones making the changes, and we have to kind of let them make their own mistakes, but we're always there, to help catch them if they need to, as being on the advisory committee, advisory board. But the way we're going to keep healthy and we're going to thrive is, even though we are no longer undergrads, as alumni, we do need to stay involved, because we're the ones that need to, now that we have a different perspective, we're in the professional world, to have more skill set where we can lead a big group of women and make the right decisions for the right reasons. That way we have sustainability. And as long as we have alumni that do that, we're going to continue to grow and be better, and maybe get on more different campuses. That way we can be here another 50, 100 years. And that's going to be the key to the health. Yeah, with any organization, there's always, there's cycles, and we've seen them all. And we just kind of sit back, and we're there as kind of like moms. When your children grow up, you have to let them make their own choices. And that's kind of the stage we're at right now as founders. And where we're there looking, but we're not trying to dictate everything, because we know they have
Mm-hmm.
to learn it. Um, but we know alumni, when they come in, some are going to be fresh out of college, and they're not going to have all the experiences that we had, or that the past president had, or the past four presidents had. They're not going to have that experience. So we are there as that advisory committee to help them. Um, but to keep that organization healthy, we need to keep um, our alumni involved. And because, again, that's a big network of experience there. We have so many different professions that we represent, teachers, administrators, a bunch um, in the higher education level. We have engineers and lawyers, judges, doctors. We have so many different now professions that we represent, that we can use those to our advantage, use those skill sets, so that way we remain healthy and we continue to grow as an organization.
So, is it fair to say, and again, because y'all are a little bit closer, is it fair to say that we're just kind of in a winter season right now? I mean, maybe us as a society and humanity is because we all know post-pandemic and things like that. But like you said, you said that we have to go through the cycles. Would you say that we're kind of in a winter season right now, or maybe a fall or a spring or a summer? And as long as we stay true to, the mission and vision that we're gonna make it through and be able to see 100 years,
Well, Arizona's kind of odd
150.
because we're not really a winter. We don't really have a winter in Arizona. So our winter is not like a winter in Wisconsin. So for us, I think it's more of a summer. Our summers are very brutal. So for us, I think it's just the world itself, just because we're all coming. I think we're not out of the pandemic yet, but we're all kind of coming out of it. The last couple years have been tough, and those ladies that pledged and were around in their undergraduate studies during the last 2 years, I commend them, because they had a different experience, because the whole world was different at the time. So I think right now, in general, everybody's coming out of maybe what a winter would be in Wisconsin, where it's a summer here, because it's been crazy. Um, and I think we're all trying to just get back to normal.
Yeah, we're
I
finding out
would
what the
agree,
new
but then
normal is.
I would also look at it. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
new normal, but I also, and like Amy says, she commends the ladies that have that have weathered that storm, that pandemic storm. But I think that it also made it so that you know, they really had to put in an effort. It's almost like, I don't want to say that for some people gamma is more important or less important, but I think it's a different kind of priority that had to be made on both, on all levels, on actives, on new members, or incoming members, on alumni, leadership, everybody. Everyone had to make more of an effort to stay connected when we could not be connected in our traditional sense. When we couldn't do certain things, when people weren't on campus and doing remote learning, and when we had to have meetings via Zoom or phone calls or conference calls, and we couldn't meet. The fact that everyone still did it.
Oops, did we lose Michelle?
Did you lose me?
I still hear her.
Okay. I think that definitely made it so that in our winter there was still those little rays of sunshine, those little rays of it was an Arizona winter. It was an Arizona winter where, it's a little chilly in the shade, but you get out in the sun and it's warm, and it's, and it's bearable. Um I think that is definitely, I think the pandemic showed us how resilient all of our little roses are.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just to wrap up, if you were, for both of you, if you were to describe our sisterhood in one word, so that technically would give us two from one from both of you, what would it be?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, I think resilient for me is definitely a word I would use for our sisterhood.
I love that.
I would say
And
love.
Amy?
Okay.
I would say love
Mm, mm,
because we really, those ones you make that really strong connection with, you really do love them as sisters. And we can go months from not talking, then I see them again, it's like we just pick up. And that's from love. That comes from love, wanting to be better for than your sister, wanting to be better for your family. It's comes from love.
And do you see how
I love
we
that.
both get to the same place using
Mm.
different approaches?
Whether on time or
because
late, right,
because
Michelle?
every
I'm just kidding.
exactly, on time or late doesn't
Yes.
matter as long as we show up. But I think Amy has a very good point, and I think everything that we do individually and together goes hand in hand and only makes the group stronger. Like she says, we may not always talk, but when we do, it's like no time has gone by.
Yeah, and I think that's something to very much admire about y'all and who have continued to be role models for us in terms of what sisterhood looks like. And I know we talked about in the beginning a little bit about conflict and how things are a little wonky sometimes, but you all did a great example of sharing of like it's about hearing everybody out and making sure that you're being able to stand your ground and say this is why I believe what I believe and being able to compromise and bend. And so thank you to you two and for again the founders and charters just to be role models of what not only sisterhood looks like but just what it means to again what you all said like we need each other, and I think that's why Candace and I named this episode and named this podcast United We Will Grow, because I think we're at a time in our lives where we kind of might feel a little disconnected, a little bit divided for sometimes silly reasons. And so again, thank you so much for being on the show, and we just want to know how sisters can get connected to y'all outside of this, whether it's on Facebook or just an email or anything that you feel comfortable with sharing. So how can they get connected to you, Amy?
I'm on Facebook and kind of Instagram. I'm on most of the platforms, but I don't use all of them. Mostly Facebook. So you can contact me there. I'm on LinkedIn as
Hmm.
well, and under Amy
Hmm.
Felix. And I put Alvarez on a couple of them just so they know it's me.
Yeah.
And then I'm usually
Michelle?
on Instagram lately. Um, I have all the platforms as well, but I hardly use my Facebook. Instagram is usually a good place to catch me.
Awesome. And is there just any last words again for documentation purposes, since we're not writing it down? Anything you'd like to say to the sisterhood and to Gamma Alpha Omega?
Just that we did this all for them. That was one of the main
Mm,
reasons why we started this, was for them, was for, like, for me, my daughter, she'll be in college here in 4 years. We did it for them. That way they'd have
wow.
a place to come home to when they went to school. And their parents wouldn't worry so much about them because they found a place.
Hmm, I love that.
I agree. Amy,
Yeah.
she's going to college in 4 years.
Yes.
I I can't even deal with that news
I
right now
know.
because I lose track of how old they are.
Yes. It's high school's
Okay.
next year.
Oh, stop it.
Nope.
I can't
I
with that.
know.
I can't with that. I can't deal with that right now. I'm gonna pretend I did not hear that because I'm just gonna go and yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna go do.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna pretend I didn't hear that. She's still like
Yes.
7 and I'm happy. I'm good with that. Okay. Um but a lot like Amy said, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna lie. We did this for ourselves, but we did it for everyone else too. I think we did it for ourselves because there's there wasn't anyone doing it for us, and at the same time, we created this for everyone else who came in after us who was looking for what we were looking for as well, so that it was available and it was there. And like Amy said, that when you were away from home, you had a home to come to, and feel accepted and supported. And, you know, like you had that base of you could be yourself and you can state your opinion or your position or your belief and know that even if someone did not agree with you, it wasn't you personally that they weren't in disagreement with, and they respected what it is that you brought to the table regardless, and that we would all learn from that. And I think we accomplished it and are accomplishing it in every new class that I see come through. Um, like I said, every time I see a post, every time I see something going on, I may not always get it. I may be like, "What are the kids doing these days? This is new and interesting," um, but I love it. I do. I mean, I'm like, I love everything that the girls do. I'm extremely proud of our organization and what everyone has accomplished together and individually. It's amazing to me. I don't think we look back on it enough. And then when we do, it's kind of like when I just heard Zoe's going to go to college in 4 years. I turn around and I look, and all of a sudden she's 14. I turn around and look, and all of a sudden this organization's 30. Who knew? Who knew that the time went by? So,
Hmm.
um, just everyone keep doing what they're doing. I'm super proud of everyone.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome, y'all. Thank you so much again for being on the show. We wanted to say thank you for just being here, for your time, for just continuing to serve us, and just for creating it in the first place. And we just wanted to say bye to you. And then Candace and I will wrap up the show. And we hope that you enjoy listening to yourselves when you get to hear it on March 25th.
Thank you,
Well,
Michelle.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Amy. I was having a little bit of audio issues, so I apologize that I wasn't chiming in the last few minutes, but I really appreciated this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Both of you.
Well,
Amazing.
thank
Thank you
you.
for having
Yeah,
us.
thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. And we look forward to who is coming up next. So y'all can just figure that out, and then we'll talk to y'all later. All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night, okay?
Thanks. Good night, ladies.
Bye now.
Thank you, ladies. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night.
It's definitely a I'll see you later.
I'll see you very soon. All right, Candace, welcome back. let's let's get these sisters
What an
out on the road
amazing
where they're
show.
going. Mm-hmm. Was there
Yes. What
anything
an
that
amazing
stood out to you?
episode. Great. Yes, I think the one thing that I heard was just how intentional they were at what they wanted to create and how they had the power of like, belonging, sense of belonging. Just
Mm,
they wanted to make a difference and they wanted to have
mm-hmm,
this bond with each other. And that's what the
mm-hmm,
foundation, the roots, the heart, the core, the center core of how we
mm-hmm,
are this amazing sisterhood. And to me, just by the way they talk about it, right? To me, that's just like that's why I joined. What they described is
mm-hmm.
why I joined, is what spoke to me, is what called to me to my heart, and why I, love giving back in this way. So, man, really appreciated this conversation. Them founders really have a lot to be proud of with this sisterhood. And I
Yeah,
thank
I
you, Keisha, for doing
absolutely.
this with me. This is an amazing podcast.
Yeah, I was so surprised, like, again, because we don't get the chance to catch Michelle often. This is my first time talking to her. But, she's the one who I reached out when I was like wanting to become a talk show host. She's in LA, things like that. So I felt like, oh, we're in the same, field. But long story short, I was very surprised to hear that because we only hear Amy's side of the story. At least I've only heard Amy's side of the story because we can't catch Michelle. She's always on the run. But when she said that Michelle was the one who wanted to start it, and Amy went up to her and said, "Let's do this," I was like, "Oh, this is new info." Because when I'm with the founders in person, they're like, "Oh, it was Amy." Well, I'm like, "Look, it was probably, I mean, it doesn't matter here and say whoever was first, but it was like, I didn't even know that that's how collaborative it was. And so that's why I'm so happy that we got them two on the call because now I hear that they were at the forefront of starting the organization, which I think is incredible. And again, I love that Amy was talking about her intentionality, both of them, their intentionality with recruitment. And I think that that's something that we need to keep in mind and continuously keep in mind. I think sometimes if we're feeling like we're in a winter season, both in humanity and as an organization, sometimes we're just like want to get numbers. We just need to meet these numbers that we've just made up in our head. But if there's one thing that I've always prided ourselves in, it was always quality over quantity. And if there isn't a good, like not good, if sisters or potential sisters are wanting to cross and they're just not there yet, that's okay. Say next time, say next semester when you feel ready because it is a lot to take on. It is awkward presenting in front of people nowadays. It is weird shaking people's hands and having to greet every active member, right? So I just think if there's anything that I've noticed from this, from them until now is if you see, for me, if you see the heart of service and the heart of leadership, those are the two things that I've noticed the most through the sisters I've had the chance to interact with, and just something to keep in mind as we continue to grow and sustain our organization. What would you say, Candace?
I would say I concur with all of that. I just feel that when you can find something that attracts you to something that you want to live in that purpose. Like I feel Gamma has helped me to give focus, to my life, to surround myself. Growing up as an only child, but then finding people that were like me, that thought like me, had goals like me,
Mm-hmm.
like to be, moving forward with our lives and that sisterhood and be supportive of one another. I mean, I think that's another thing
Mm-hmm.
that I heard is like being there, lessons to be learned, going through the life cycle, not being alone in that journey of life,
Mm.
the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like it's all part of the lessons that you learn in life and the experience that you get. So I commend the founders and, thanks. They called out Amy's husband. He was kind of the glue that brought those two together. Hey, I hear someone's doing this, and hey, you two should connect. And then I'm all in, like
Mm-hmm.
again, I believe in divine design, divine intervention, all of that was aligned very beautifully. And this is exactly, how we arrived at this point 30 years later. So very
I love
excited for
that.
this episode to drop. Great job. What a way to end this evening. So thank you so much.
Of course, of course. So before we leave y'all, we just want to remind you that Nationals is coming up in Tempe, Arizona on June 22nd to June 25th at Arizona State University. So if you want to join the motherland, if you want to be on Gamalandia, if you want to meet Amy, I can't say Michelle, again, she's hard to catch, but if you want to meet Amy, I'm pretty sure 95% that she'll be there. Who knows? Maybe her daughter, maybe middle school now, is going to be there. So just make sure you find your way there. Candace and I are going to find our way over there too. Who knows what that looks like if we're going to be recording live. So just make sure that you register online. All of the information should be coming from Greek Capital Management. If you have any questions, reach out to a sister who is a little bit more connected. I'm sure they'll have the answers. And hopefully you'll be that sister too, who will find their way back to Gamma Alpha Omega. And again, y'all, we may be in this season as an organization, but we just got to keep being resilient and keep leading with love. But other than that, y'all, if you want to follow Candace on social media, you can follow her at
www.candacesanchez.com. My social media handles are within my website. I have Facebook, a LinkedIn, and a Twitter account and an IG. So please look me up, follow me. I'd love to, if anyone's looking for a life coach, I'm your girl. Me and Kay Short, we're willing to help you out. We are your
look
go-to.
look here. First off, you doing the most. Second off, you can find me on Instagram at coach.kshort. That's the only place you can find me. I'm following in Candace's footsteps and eventually being all over the place. But if you need a quarter life coach, that's when you can hit me up. I can't teach y'all about life. That's Candace. If you go 25 and above, you go with her. If you want 25 and below, you go with me, okay? I could probably get you to 30, but no promises. I'm still figuring it out. But other than that, y'all, make sure to tune in for the next episode as we bring in Alumni Affairs, VP of Alumni Affairs, Kimberly from the NEB. We had a great time talking to her, and so we want to hear more about her story and exactly what Amy and Michelle were saying. The heart of the organization and maybe where our gap is where our alum is at, where our alumni is at. I think we need to be reconnected. That's why Candace and I are here. But if we can start really getting strong in our alumni affairs, I think that's really going to be something that's very pivotal for this organization for the next season and next cycle of our lives. So we look forward to talking to you on the next episode, and we will see you then. Bye now.